And then after we get done, I'll save that recording and put it out on our Blackboard site just as usual, okay? So some of you may have dealt with this before, some of you may have not. I think everyone's taken the class, the introduction class where you guys generated contours, is that correct? Where you did it by hand? Anybody familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know that that was a real laborious process. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this thing. That's a real laborious process if you do it by hand, but essentially, let me just explain that process a little bit before we get into the actual software. So a surface object is a surface of basically anything that you might think of it as just strictly topography, but it's not always topography. So it could be things like parking lots, it could be roadway surfaces, it can be existing ground, and it can be all of those things. But it is really just the top layer of what you're looking at. And it uses a process called a triangulated irregular network, or what we call a TIN for short. So let's just go look at that real quick. I just want to open this guy up. So a TIN, and you guys probably remember that. So you typically have a group of points. So I have a point here and a point here, and these are three-dimensional points. So these points have a location, X, Y, or northing and easting, but they also have a Z value or elevation, if you will. So what we're doing is when we get into this TIN triangulation process, what you're doing is you're generating a triangle from here to here, here to here, and here to here. So that triangle has a slope to it because if you remember, planes are defined by 3 points. And so what you have is your software is going to come in here and it's going to triangulate. So it's going to have these two triangles are hooked together. These two triangles are hooked. But notice the way I'm generating it, there's different ways you could swap these faces of these triangles. And the software just kind of goes in and triangulates it any way it wants to. And it would even give me a triangle right there, okay? So what this is your surface essentially. It's just a chain of triangles that are linked together. And so this surface, this line here is common to both of these guys, okay? So what happens is when you're doing a contour, you're interpolating where, let's say, an 800 contour is coming through it and where it's coming out. It's kind of what it's doing. But all of the data of the surface is held right within these triangles, okay? So remember, these are X, Y, Z, so this guy has a tilt, that guy has a local tilt, and you can calculate all kinds of things on it. I can tell you which way this guy's locally tilting. So for instance, if I do that, you can get this thing on here called a slope arrow. So I can say that guy's tilting this way, this guy's tilting this way, and that's another name for that is aspect. But what it's really showing us is the way water would be flowing through this thing. And we're going to see that very process. The other thing we said we could do was we can calculate how a contour is kind of snaking around through here, coming in. There might be one coming in through here. Okay, you guys understand that process, right, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to see that. We're going to see that today, except all the beauty is like if you, I don't know how many points you guys did by hand, takes forever. It's a long process. The software is going to do it in seconds. Now, the one thing about it is it's just going to do what it wants to do, essentially. Okay. So what happens here is you got to think about this. This is important. These triangles, technically, there's a couple of rules to them. They should be as equilateral as possible. Okay. And that's the key area. So through any 3 successive points, they should be as equilateral as possible. So for instance, what I'm saying is if I look at, these are pretty equilateral, but your software, the way it triangulates, it may come through here and it may swap this face. So instead of doing it like that, it could do it like this. So I get a little bit longer, skinny triangle. So if these aren't as equilateral, this may not give me the best solution between these 2 triangles. So I have the ability to flip the face. You don't always do that when you're doing these by hand, but in the software I can flip them pretty easily. Also, anytime I do have a skinny triangle, so there's a skinny triangle right here, that's usually going to occur on the edge. And we usually need to get rid of those. Okay, so those are things we're going to typically delete out. All right. Now, the other thing that's very important is if you have, let's say, let me show you. If I have a creek that's meandering down through these triangles like this, let's say this represents a creek. If I did not gather the information for that creek, it's not going to do me any good. Okay, it's not going to show up on the triangles. But if, let's say, I did take this point and I took this point and I got this point on my creek and I got this point, the triangles should be configured differently. Now, what we have to do to make sure that the triangles work right, and give me another point, is we have to create what's called a break line. And a break line is a line that occurs down in the flow of something. So like center lines of creeks, back of curves, center lines of pavements, anything that we don't want these triangles to cross through, that would be a break line. So if I just let this thing triangulate with those points as they are, what I might get is this. There's a triangle, here's a triangle, here's a triangle. Does everybody see what's going on there? Right here, this triangle and this triangle is violating this creek. Basically, it's saying that this creek doesn't exist here. So in order to do this properly, what we would have to do is paint what's called a break line down this. So the break line would actually come down from that point to that point, and this point to this point, and this point to this point, and that point to that point. By doing that, it would not allow the system to put this here. Okay, the break line, in other words, is going to force a triangle edge. Okay, so in other words, when it triangulates, it can't do that. That would be a false picture. So now when it gives you the triangulation, what's going to happen with that break line in place, I'm going to have point here to here. There's a triangle. There's a triangle. And notice what's happening is where those break lines were in there, they become faces of the triangle. Okay, so that configures that totally differently. Okay, does everybody get the idea?
Yeah.
So we're going to show you, we're going to generate a surface without break lines first, and I'm going to put a few simple break lines in there. Now, break lines will tend to, it's interesting, the software tends to do like your surface like about 75 to 80% perfectly, but then there's always that 20% to maybe, 30% that you have to edit in. And a lot of that is dependent on how many shots were taken out in the field, how good the information was gathered to begin with by whoever was doing it. Okay, a number of shots, whoever was doing it properly. If they don't put enough break lines in there, you can't second guess it. So those are kind of your key areas. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this screen. We're going to go ahead and open up Civil 3D if you haven't already. And we're going to see over in the prospector, there's a surface point for your surface node for your prospector, but there's nothing there. So that means we don't have any surfaces currently. And you can go up here to Home tab, Ground area, and then there's ways to create surface. Okay, so there's a lot of different methodologies. Create surface, which basically what this does, it just creates a name. Doesn't give you any data, but it just creates a name. In other words, it puts a node out there to contain the data, but it doesn't have anything in it. So there's these things called DEM files. That's a digital elevation file. Digital elevation model is what that stands for. It's basically like a spreadsheet in a grid. Point clouds would be people that are doing laser scanning. They could pop those in and create a 10 from a point cloud. That's going to be in Civil 3D. Civil 3D doesn't like that too much because it has too many points typically. So usually you have to massage the data before you bring that in as a cloud. You can create a surface from someone else's 10. You can create a surface from GIS data, or you can create it from grading objects or corridors. So there's a lot of different things we can do there. But we're just going to generate a real quick surface. So you can go here if you'd like and click Create Surface. That's one way. or you can come down here and you can right click and you can say create surface. Okay, so either way, we're just going to go ahead and create a surface. All right. So this box should pop up. Is that working for everybody? Is that good? Okay, I'll take that. Yeah, that is yes. There's different types here. We have what's called a 10 surface, a triangulated irregular network, which is what we're going to deal with. You can do a grid surface, which is primarily for doing types of volume. And then they have that volumetric surface. And then they have a 10 volume surface. So essentially, we're going to be working in that 10 format. The layers that it's going to use, it's going to generate this on the C-topo layer, which is fine. We're going to let that fly. The name, we can call this anything we want. If you don't call it anything, it's just going to call it surface 1, surface 2, surface 3. So if you want, we can just type in there. We can just type in the word project, because that's what I've called everything else. I'm just calling this my project surface. So there's a style associated with this. Right now it's using a 2-foot and a 10-foot background. I'm going to change that. We're going to click on that. And what we're going to do is open this guy up, and we should find one that's called we're going to do a 1 foot and a 1 and 5 design. So that'll give us a little bit better picture. Okay. And if you don't get that right now, we can get that later. All right. So we called it project. We grabbed the new style, and we're going to okay that. How's that working for everybody so far?
Good.
All right. So if we go over here now, you notice there's now, it's active, and what you have is a node that's occurred. There's your project surface. And basically think of that like a folder that contains all the data that's going to create this. So if we open up that project, you'll see there's masks, watersheds, then under definitions is where all the action happens. So these are the ways you create surface. You can use boundaries, break lines, contours, DEM files, drawing objects, editing. So you got a lot to do with, okay? Most people that are surveyors are probably creating their surfaces from points. So you've got 2 ways to do that. You can either do that through a point file or point groups. So what we're going to do is generate some points. We're going to import some points, and we're going to look at that point, and then we're going to just generate a group from that, okay? So if you haven't had a chance to do that, make sure you go out to this, download that point CSV file, okay? We're going to use that now. So we're going to go to points. There's an insert points to drawing file. So we're going to go to the insert tab, and we're going to do a points from file. Okay. So the points files that we're talking about typically are coming from, like, say, a data collector or something like that, but they have to be in a particular format. So notice down here, there's all these different formats, comma delimited or space delimited. So that just means the data either has a comma that separates the values, or it has nothing. The common one is comma delimited. A lot more people use that, I believe, than space delimited, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. So what we're using, we're going to use one that's formatted, and you have to know this ahead of time, but we're going to use one that's called a point number, northing, easting, Z, which is elevation description, comma delimited. So that's what we're going to be looking at, okay? So what I have to do is go find that file. We're going to go to this plus here. Now I put mine out on the desktop, so I'm going to go to the desktop, and I'm looking for that CSV file. It should show up in here somewhere on my, there it is. That's called project points. I'm going to open that, okay? Now, if it executed properly, it'll have a green check on there. If it can't find anything, then you got problems, okay? And let's make sure now that we've got the right format. I'm going to use this point number, northing, easting, elevation description file. And it should show you that point number, northing, easting, elevation description, okay? And if you've got that and it looks good, go ahead and hit OK. Now, what we did was we actually imported points into Civil 3D. So at this point, we don't have a surface. We're getting ready. We're getting primed to get that surface going, but we're going to use point data to do this. So you don't probably see anything on the screen, but if you do a Z, enter, E, enter for a zoom extents, there's your points. If they're rather large like mine are, I'm going to knock that down by changing my drawing scale factor to maybe a 20 scale. That'll just bring that size down. Okay, is everybody's points showing up?
Mine
Yeah.
currently are not. I don't know why. It's downloading something weird on my desktop and I'm not finding it. So I'm just trying to deal with that right now.
All right, well, let me know. Anybody else problems?
I couldn't find I couldn't find mine on the desktop.
You're looking for a CSV file, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me do something here real quick. I'm going to stop the recording real quick. Okay, so we have points now. Let's go look at our points real quick because it's important to kind of look at them. So you should have an all points group, and let's look at the edit points. And we'll notice in that report, you have elevations, point numbers, northing and easting, and then you got descriptions. B/T is like base top, edge drive, top of bank, ground, mostly ground. We do have some that we're going to look at. FL is fence line. BW is back a walk. So that's another thing. You'd have to know who did this. So most companies have codes that they use all the time. Everybody knows what it means. We've got two that we're going to be looking at creating point groups. One is swale, SW. The other one we're going to be looking at, I think, is called, let's see, what am I looking for? Oh, TS. That's toe of slope. Okay, toe of slope. So we're going to use those to create point groups. Okay, so what I want to do is create 2 point groups right now. So we're going to go to close the panorama, the Vista view. I'm going to go to the point groups, right click, new. We're going to call this a swale point group. I'm going to include raw descriptions with SW. Apply that and go to your point list and make sure you've got SW points in there. Okay. If that's good, we can okay that. Okay. They might show up with labels right now, which doesn't really matter. Is that working for everybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and we're going to do one more point group. Actually, we're going to do 2 more because we're going to create a blank point group as well. So I'm going to go to new point group. We're going to call this toe of slope. So this would be the point where your slope is coming down and it's stopping and then it's hitting something a little bit flatter. So we're going to call that a toe of slope. Include points with raw description of T/S, toe of slope. Go ahead and apply that and let's look at that point list. And again, there's quite a few there, not a bunch, but a few. We're going to go ahead, okay that, and you notice, okay, you guys getting labeling like I am? If you're not, it's just a style issue on your point group. Is that good for everybody?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, anybody else questions? All right, so we are going to use those to create break lines, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So I'm going to do one more thing because I'm going to want to have my blank capability. So when I don't want to look at my points, I can get rid of them. So we're going to create another point group. You can call it anything you want. No points. I just like to use the word blank. But do make sure that we add the point style as none and create a label style as none. Include all points, apply that, okay that, and everything should blank out. All right. So let's do one more thing so we can see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead, my point groups. So remember, point group management is really incredibly important. Go to properties. I'm going to shove my all points point group on the top. And if you want, we can change the all points properties so that instead of saying none on the description, you might want to, let's just put the point number available. We don't worry about anything else right now. I just want point number. So that should show up like that. Okay. Is that good for everybody?
Can you do that again? I missed that.
What do you want me to do? Just the,
The
So
all points?
so I created, do you have a blank point group and they're hidden?
Yeah.
Okay, so click on the point group section and right click and then go to properties there.
Okay.
Your point groups property box should pop up, right?
Yeah.
So if all points is at the bottom, just click on it and then hit the promote arrow up to the top. So it should be on top of the blank.
Yeah.
And then you should just either apply it or okay it, and it should look like that. Are you getting all your points now, Shelley?
Yeah. All my points are, I just don't have like the numbers like you do.
Oh, okay. So all you got to, that's just your point style. That's your style of your point group. So just click on the all points point group, right click, go to properties. And under your
Okay.
default styles, you have none for your
Okay.
labels.
Right.
Just open that up and there should be a points only setting.
Okay.
Just
All right.
make that current and we're good to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so we're ready to do a surface. So remember, there's all kinds of things you can use to create surfaces. We're going to do it with point groups. I find point groups are really nice. In fact, what you can do a lot of times, you may have a gazillion points on a project, but some of them may not even have elevations. Some of them have nothing to do with the surface you're going to make. So what's kind of nice is you can create a surface point group and then you can manage it. Well, basically everything on this surface is part of the all points point group. So we're going to just let it rip with that. So what I'm going to do is go to the surfaces, open up surfaces, and open up projects so you can see all of this stuff right here. Okay, is that good? And we are going to go to point groups, just click on it and then right click. And it should say add. So I'm going to go ahead and add. The point groups that you want to add show up. And we are going to add the all points point group and hit OK. You have a surface. It's that hard. How's it look? Did everybody get a surface to show up?
Yeah.
All right. Now we see some weird stuff going on here, don't we? We've got contours. That's what we're looking at. So the green contours are your 10-foot contours. The kind of salmon color are 2 foots. And we're not even looking at the 10 itself. We're going to look at that in a minute. But what we do notice, we got this thing going on here, which is really nasty. So we have a problem, okay? And this is not uncommon. This is due to a blown shot. It's either way below the surface or way above the surface, and it creates what I call either an island or a hole, and we're going to look at that here in a minute. Okay, is everybody seeing that? Those are actually contours that are whipping around this thing, and so you can see this thing's either really high or really low. Does everybody get the idea what's going on? Anybody seeing this?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's also a green line that's running around it. This is called your boundary of your surface. And currently it's actually going outside. If you notice over here, these are my points that are actually creating the surface, but this thing decided to triangulate way out here. So there's a bunch of triangles that are showing up out here that we're going to get rid of. Okay. So we're going to look at this surface now. And what I'm going to do, let's see. I'm going to tell you, if you have a middle mouse key, hit your shift key, hold it down, and your middle mouse, hold that down, and you should be able to maneuver this like this. Anybody getting that to work for them? You could also use the view cube. You can drag it around with your view cube if you want, but it's really harder to do that. Okay. Is anybody getting this to work like that?
Yeah,
All right. What do you notice now, Shelly?
and it's a high point.
It's a real high point, right? We got
Yeah.
a blown shot, okay? Now, this happens. This happens all the time in the real world. Usually you don't get shots like that unless you're keying them in. I mean, that looks like that could be 100 feet higher, but a lot of times people will raise the rod to take a shot or two, and they forget to change the rod back, so the data collector thinks it's higher than it should be. We get this to occur all the time in the real world, so this is something we're going to handle, okay? Now, we can isolate right in on this point. We'll get rid of it. Also, though, as you tool around like this, I want you to notice if you're holding your shift and middle mouse key, kind of zoom in. What you're looking at, that's your 10, and if you go on edge, you can see it's actually not flat. I call it a crumpled piece of tinfoil. That's what it looks like, okay? And you can see the triangles, how they're actually triangulating within that. Does everybody see how that's working? Is everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to bring this back to a normal view. We're going to be doing a lot of 3D stuff today, so that you're going to like this once you get in. Once you get a handle on it, it's great, because whenever you deal with a surface, you got to be able to look at it in 2D and 3D. So the quickest way to bring this guy back to where we want him is to come over here to the top where it says custom, click on that, and you'll see the word top. Just click on that and he brings him right back. Okay. All right, how we doing here? Good so far? Everybody good? Not getting much input from you guys. All right,
Yeah.
I'm moving on. So we need to edit this surface. There's two things we need to take care of immediately. One is we need to get rid of this point. The other thing is we need to edit the edge, okay? Now, can anybody suggest how we could get rid of that point?
You go into its properties and change the elevation on it, right?
Well, you could. I mean, that's not a bad suggestion, but do you know what that point's supposed to be?
No, but
Okay.
I'm going
So-
through everything right now, and it's 975, and everything else is in the 800. So
Yeah, but I guess my point is I agree with what you're saying. That's a perfect example, but here's my point. Do we actually know it's just 875? Okay.
no,
Whatever
you're right.
caused the blown shot may be more than just 100 feet rise. Okay. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So probably I'm just going to call this point bad. I would want to get rid of it. So there's a couple of ways I could do it. I could actually delete it out of the point group. Okay. But if I do that, the problem is that might be a good 2D point. It just isn't a good 3D point. Get my point? So I don't want to necessarily take it. I don't want to get rid of it from the point groups. I just want to get rid of it from the surface. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to do this process. We can take it out of the surface. So what we're going to do, I want you to notice too, by the way, if you just let your cursor sit there, do you notice it shows you whatever Z value you're at? Isn't that cool? So as we tool around here, it knows exactly what the elevation is on the surface just by the position of the cursor. All right, so let's go ahead. You can click on your surface anywhere. It should highlight like that. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
So we're going to right click and we're going to go to Edit Surface Style. Edit Surface Style. So I want you to go to Information tab if it's not already there. Wait a minute. You know what? I wanted to go to the other one. Sorry. Just go ahead and escape out of there. There's too many things. You can do the same thing here, but I'm going to do it one other way. Does Let's go ahead and just click on that again. Oh, you know what? I was in the right spot. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll do edit surface style. No, I'm right. We're going to just change the look of the surface style, okay? So go over to the display tab. All right, so what I want to do is I want to turn on points and I want to turn on triangles. Now you can leave your contours there if you want, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my minor contours off and leave my major contours on. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this and okay this, and you should now be able to see your surface looks a lot different. Okay, is that working for everybody?
Yep.
So here's the thing that's going on here. We're now looking at 10 lines, okay? We're also looking at points that create those 10 lines, and we're looking at the contours. Now, the other points, these are actual civil points, okay? So we're gonna get rid of those so we can see what's going on here. So we're gonna go over to point groups, right-click on point groups, properties, and we're going to take the blank and put that above everything. And then just like that. So we get rid of that, okay? Is that good for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're going to edit a surface using edit routines, okay, you have to have the triangles on, okay? You have to have the triangles on to be able to edit a surface. Without that, it won't work. So we turn those on, and we're going to right click or just click it. Notice up here in your context sensitive editing, there's a lot of other things that are going on here. One of them is edit surface. So we're going to open up this and look at all the different things we can do there. We can add lines, delete lines, swap edges, add points, delete points, modify. So you can do a lot of different things there. What we're going to do is delete a point. So this is not going to be a civil 3D Kogo point. This is a point within the 10 itself. So zoom up so you can see that blue cross. Click on it, and then just hit enter. And you should notice that it took that point out, and that island is no longer there. So we just edited that very quickly. That was a real easy edit.
So you just have to click on the blue.
The blue point and then hit enter. But don't click on any other blue points.
No.
Take them out too, right? Okay.
It doesn't take it out. Does it disappear?
The point's gone.
No, mine doesn't do it.
Okay, hold on a minute. I'm gonna back mine up.
All right, let's try this again.
All right, do you see yours looks like that, Shelly?
Yes.
You're zoomed up so you can see it, right?
Yes.
Click on the 10 so it should highlight.
Yep.
Open up edit surface points.
Right.
Delete point.
Yep.
You're clicking on the blue point.
Yep.
And then hit enter.
Nope.
Nope.
That's weird.
That's real weird. Let me check something real quick. I don't think you can lock them. Are your other points locked somehow?
I don't know.
Let's go to your point groups and go to your all points point group and look at the edit points.
Edit point.
Are they locked?
Nope, hold on. Oops, doesn't look like they are.
All right, we're gonna do yours a different way. Okay, yours should have worked. Did everybody else's work?
Yep.
Let me ask you, do you have your contours on, Shelley?
How do I know that?
They'd be
Um,
green.
Huh?
They'd be green. Did you see? Okay,
Yeah,
hold
mine
on.
looks just like yours, except I have that one point.
You got green ones, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna do yours a different way. Don't you
Okay.
guys? Don't let everybody else do this. Okay. I want you to go to all points, edit your points.
All right.
That's point 23. That's the problem.
Yep.
Click on 23, and then right
Okay.
click, and you should see a delete. Delete it out of there.
All right.
Okay. Now, if you look at your surface, it probably shows you a yellow thing in front of it.
Hold on. A yellow thing in front of it.
Well, or behind it.
Oh yeah. So I have a bunch
You have
of.
to
You
you have to
have
rebuild.
to update
Yeah. So what you're going to do is right click and hit rebuild.
on project. All right.
Did that work?
Rebuild snapshot.
No, just
So the
rebuild.
surface does not have it. So I
No,
clicked
no,
on.
no, you're just rebuilding that. You're not rebuilding a snapshot. Just rebuild.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
third one down.
All right. Yep. I'm there now.
I don't know what's going on and why yours didn't work. I have no clue for that, but it should have.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we fixed that point, guys. So let's do this. We're gonna take this style back and look at it now. So I'm gonna just click on this and right click, edit surface style. Let's go back. We're gonna turn points off. You can leave triangles on if you'd like, but what I want to do is turn the minor and the major contours on. Go ahead and apply that. You should notice the picture's a lot better now. We got rid of that errant point. So actually, it was kind of cool. We saw two ways we could do it. Is that working?
So when you got rid of that point, you just got rid of it off of the surface. The point itself is still in the database, right?
Well, it's not in Shelley's case.
Right,
We took it out of her database because
right.
for some reason her routine wasn't acting right. So yeah, but normally you're right. What it does is it just takes it, it removes it from the surface points that it created from, but it doesn't take it out of the database. That's correct. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so what we want to do is I want to bring my points, my all points show up again so we can see how they interact with this edge, because we're gonna edit now this edge. Okay. So we're gonna go to point groups, properties, send your all points above your blank. So here's, to answer your question, Dave, directly, if you look, there's 23 showing up, but there's no triangles going to it.
Yep, that helps.
And Shelley, you don't have any point 23, right?
Right.
Okay, yours is just gone, all right? Okay, so let's look at this edge over here. All right, so you can see it looks like the edge of the survey went from 79 to 78 to 63, 62, but this guy found a point out here, so he just triangulated, okay? This is wrong. Also remember, triangles should be equilateral as much as possible, but what's happening, these are long, what we call long skinny triangles. They need to go, okay? There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can draw a polyline around it and create a mask based on that, or you can actually use that to trim. What I'm going to show you is what's called line removal, okay? And again, we had to leave the triangles on because you have to have triangles on to be able to do this. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And we are going to do what's called edit surface. And we are going to delete a line. Now you have to be really careful when you use this tool. Don't get too heavy-handed. I usually do it just a couple at a time, but if you click outside of here, notice this is a crossing. So I'm going to cross it through those triangles right there and then hit enter, and they're now gone. So it's like trimming them. And I got another couple triangles I'm going to do right here. They're gone. And another triangle right there, and it's gone. Is that working for everybody?
Yeah.
So let's look down here. There's a couple when we get rid of that one. It's gone. Again, be careful. Don't get too heavy-handed. If you're not sure, just do one triangle at a time. Okay, never do a bunch because they're, you know, you don't want to delete them. You can add them back, but it's usually not the best way to do things. Okay. Got a little triangle over here that doesn't belong. Get rid of him. Looks pretty good up here. That looks like that one could go. Doesn't really impact me too much. So sometimes it doesn't matter if you have those ones going out there, but it's just, it's cleaner. It's a cleaner surface if you get rid of the junk that doesn't belong. How's that looking? Is that going pretty well? So you can add lines also between points. So you can add lines or you can delete them. I found in general, if you delete too much, rather than do undos, what I normally do is I'll just delete my whole surface and start it over because it's that simple to do it. Okay, just be careful though. Remember, you're editing this surface and you are making a decision how that surface is ultimately going to look. And not only that, everything that you do in civil is linked to your surface, like your alignments, your profiles, all of that good stuff. Okay, is this coming out all right, guys? You doing all right?
I'm
Yeah.
good.
Okay, good. So now, so we've looked at editing a surface by trimming or deleting lines and also deleting points. So remember, you can add points or delete points. So two things kind of there. Those are the two big things that you do for editing. So what we're going to do now is add break lines. And over here in the prospector, you'll see these guys called break lines. Let's go ahead and right click on this. I just want to show you, and then we're going to do what's called add. So they have different types of break lines, what's called a standard break line, a proximity break line, a wall break line from file, or what they call non-destructive. So a standard break line is basically a break line that is, you've got like a 3D polyline that has the vertexes at the proper elevation. So that's convenient if you're out in the field and they were shooting back a curve, back a curve, back a curve. They can generate in their data collector file a 3D polyline that when it downloads in, you can use that as a break line. Now, if you're using a 2D polyline, the elevations have to be at the same elevation. So you can't use a standard one for that because otherwise you're going to get a flat plane. So sometimes it's better to use proximity. So if you draw your polyline near points, it's going to grab the elevation of the point for you. And that's what we're going to use. We're going to do what's called a proximity. And a wall is kind of cool because that means that out in the field, these guys can shoot the top of a wall and then they can say, oh, the wall is 8 feet. So you can create a wall line using a polyline, and then you can tell it's 8 feet down or it's 8 feet above, depending on whether they shot top or bottom. So there's a lot of different really cool features in here, okay? We're gonna use what's called a proximity break line. We're not gonna see a lot of difference or change in our 10, but we are gonna see some change. So what I want you to do is we'll cancel this for now. We're gonna create a break line first out of a polyline, and then we're gonna add that into the surface, okay? So I want you to go to your point groups, go to properties. We're going to put all points at the very bottom, and we're going to put swale at the very top. So that swale should be the only thing that's going to show up for me. I'm going to apply that and okay that. And mine didn't work. Why didn't mine work? All right, let me try a regen. Okay, you might have to do a regeneration to make it show up, but you should see that going on right there. Are you guys getting that to show up?
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't really matter what layer we're on because we're going to delete this polyline once we create it, but we're going to paint a polyline right down from here, okay? So I want to do one thing first. I want to go to my OSNAPs, set my OSNAP setting up to node, okay? Turn every other OSNAP off, just set it to node because I want to be able to snap those guys, and then turn that on, okay? Is that good? So we're going to now do a P line. Just type in PL for polyline. This is a 2D polyline. Now we could use a 3D, but we're going to use a 2D. And we're going to just pick on that one first. And then you'll see that little low snap pop up. And you'll just see this guy do this. And you'll see that do that. And that. And then that. And when you're done, hit enter. Okay. Is that working?
Yep.
So I want you to notice on our 10, if the line is sitting right on top of a face of a triangle, it's not going to change anything. But right here, I'm crossing this triangle. So what's going to happen is it's going to flip that face for me. I think down here, it's also going to flip this one. So in general, my swale probably self-defined, but what's happening is this is going to definitely define it better, okay? So I'd kind of like you to kind of zoom in on this area so we can see it. When this surface changes, you're going to see it change drastically, okay? Not drastically, but just it's going to change. Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
So we're going to go over to break lines, right-click Add. We're going to call this break line swale. I mean, you don't have to call them anything, by the way, but it's nice to name them because that way, if you go back and look at your break line history or whatever, you can deal with that a little bit. All right, so we're going to go the type. Make sure you set the type to proximity. So in other words, because this break line has the same elevation, we don't want that. It actually has to drop. So it's going to grab the elevation from the point by putting it to proximity. We're going to hit OK now. You're going to go up here and you're going to just select, actually you can just select it anywhere. So I'm just going to select it and then hit enter. And you might notice that guy changed right there. He flipped the triangle face there. And he flipped the triangle faces up here. So it's actually created a little bit of a swale point and a little bit of a swale point there. And you can actually now, I want you to show you something. Click on your polyline. And if you get this thing that says polyline or 10 surface, select polyline and then hit enter. And then type in list, L-I-S-T. What you'll notice, and if you can't get this to work, just look at mine. Notice that my Z values on this polyline are all the same number, 871, 871, 871. They can't be any different because it's a 2D polyline. If you go over here to the break lines, right click, open it up, and click on swale, right click and go to properties. You'll notice that the elevations of those break line points are not all the same because they're following the point elevation value. That's because you did a proximity. So that's an important feature. Is everybody seeing what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this box. And we don't need this anymore. You can actually delete that polyline if you want, and it doesn't change anything, okay? All right, so we're going to do this now. We've got a toe that's happening over on this side of our surface, so we're going to add another break line. So I'm going to go to point groups, properties. I'm going to send my swale below the blank, and I'm going to send my toe slope above to the top, apply that, okay that. And again, you might have to do a regen to make it work, to get rid of everything. So we have a TOA slope that's kind of tight. It's coming in here from 102, then to 104, 105. So what we're going to do, we're just going to again do a P line. It doesn't matter whether we go top to bottom or bottom to top. I'm going to go into P line, and I'm going to just make sure I get that node snap to node to node to node. Just follow your nodes like that, and you get them in like that. And you can notice here, it's definitely going to configure things differently in here because you can see where that contour is crossing, and that's going to be a problem. So it's probably, again, not going to change much. It's going to change a little bit though, okay? Particularly might want to be in this area right here. All right, is everybody ready?
Yeah.
So we're going to add another break line. Right click on add. We'll call this toe. Make sure you use a proximity, or it'll really whack things out if you don't, because it's going to be all the same elevation. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Select your polyline and then hit enter. And you'll notice it definitely did some reconfiguring right in here. Okay. So it's tightened this up, makes that swale or that slope look a whole lot better than it was. All right. Okay, is that working for everybody?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we're gonna get rid of our points now. We're pretty much done with points. So I'm gonna go to my point group, and I'm gonna just set blank up to the top. Apply it, and again, remember, y'all sometimes have to do regens. So I'm also going to take a look at getting rid of this. I don't need this guy anymore. He was just to create that with, so I don't need that. Because the break line exists now as a file within this surface. Okay, so a couple other things I want to show you. Let's kind of zoom in over on this area right here. So when we see contours, sometimes if they kind of look like they're going up, they're going down, like this is zigzagging around. I mean, you might look at this and you might think, you know, if I flip some of these triangles, it may have a little bit better look for what I'm looking at here. So I'm going to show you how we can flip triangles, and you don't always want to do this, but notice this guy's really kind of long and skinny here, and these are kind of skinny. So if I flip the triangle face, I might get a better look. Now, you kind of have to know what you're doing if you're going to start doing this stuff. So you just don't go in and do it for whatever reason you might think it looks good. I'm doing it because I know that contours don't ground doesn't typically do this kind of thing. So I'm going to click on my surface here, and I'm going to go to edit the surface. And we're going to do what's called swap edge. So I'm going to take this guy right here and click him. And if it has this thing 10 surface, just select it. And it flipped it. Now, I got a long skinny one here, but that contour may reflect more what I think really is happening there, okay, by flipping that. Let's flip this one and see what happens. And again, those might be better representations of what's going on out there. But again, you just don't do this because, okay? You've got to know why you're doing it. Now, here's a long, skinny one. I'm going to flip these. This one might be a really good one to flip. So in general, I'm looking to try to get equilateral triangles. That's the idea. And the better I get, but see, when I get something like that, that's no good. So I'm going to flip that back. So be really careful. If you're going to do this editing, be really careful, okay? Watch what you're doing. It's going to make a difference. Like this one, watch here. That certainly made a huge difference, but when I get that kind of stuff going on, that's probably not good. So I'm going to flip that back. Okay, you guys getting the idea? And I'm going to go ahead and escape out of here. Okay, just flip a few triangles just to kind of get the feel for it, and then we're kind of see how that works. Is that looking good, guys? We all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a nice surface now. Okay, so now we can start to do some really cool stuff with this. What we're going to do is just click on this surface, and we're gonna change that display back. So I'm going to right click, go to Edit Surface. Under the Display tab, I'm going to now turn off triangles. I don't need to see those anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that and OK that. And notice we got a really nice surface here. Okay. It does look a little bit jaggedy, right? You notice how it's kind of jagged looking right there? Not probably the best that you would see. So very often we'll do what's called contour smoothing. And contour smoothing is going to be a way of making these look a little bit more artistic, if you will. Now, it's not going to change the data, but it just maybe looks better. Because remember, the surface is actually the 10. So no matter what you represent it with here, those pictures, it's actually the triangles. Okay, that's your surface. So we're going to right click on this guy. And we are going to, or select it rather. I'm going to go to Surface Props. And there's some cool things I can do in here. Analysis. I want to check this out because I wanted to show you a couple things about this. If you go to the Information tab, there's a quick way of grabbing your surface information. Definition is kind of neat because this shows you how you've created your surface and you can toggle things on and off. So you have your build operations, how it's building it. You have your data operations. You have your edit operations. But what's cool down here is you have a list of everything you've done. So for instance, if I don't want to see my break lines or I want to turn my break lines off, I can actually go in here where it says add break line. I can toggle that off and then apply it and then rebuild the surface. And what it did is it actually changed this up here to what it was originally. So if I want to bring that back, again, go back into my history, toggle that guy back on. I'm going to move this so you can see that. I'm going to apply that, rebuild it, and it changed some things up in here. Okay. So wouldn't do that too much, but that's something you can do. Those are kind of neat processes. Let's see what else we want to look at in that box. Statistics. Let's look at statistics. This will show you your highest point, your lowest point, how many triangles you have. So if you go to General, notice it shows me I have 110 points in this 10 surface. Your maximum X and Y are northern and eastern coordinates. And this is always a very telling thing too. What's your minimum elevation and what's your maximum elevation? So I like to look at that kind of information sometimes. Also, I look at extended data. It'll tell you how many square feet you got of each triangle combined. And notice there's a 2D square feet and a 3D square feet, because remember those triangles are tilted. So this would actually be your surface area right there, surface area. Your minimum grade and percent grade and your maximum grade. And we're going to show you how we can actually display all this stuff in pictures. So this gets to really a lot of neat stuff. And then you've got 10 statistics as well. Number of triangles that you have, the minimum triangle area, all those kind of things. You're not going to use this information too much, but very often I do always like to look at what's my min, what's my max. Those are kind of nice things to know. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and smooth this guy real quick. Show you a little bit of a different look. I'm going to click on this guy, right click. I'm going to go to Edit Surface Style. So right now this style is not very smooth. So what we're going to do is go to the Contour tab. And under the Contour tab, you'll see Contour Smoothing. And right now that's set to false. So what we're going to do is set that to true. And then you have two ways of creating these. You can either do it with a spline, or you can do it with basically a 3D polyline or 2D polyline. If it's got 2D polyline, then it'll have the add vertices idea. So here's your smoothing factor right here. I'm just going to drag that up a little bit, maybe up to about there. Go ahead and apply that. And you'll notice that your contours got pretty smooth. They look a lot better than they did before. But again, I'm not really altering the surface. I'm just altering the way it looks. The 10 triangles are exactly what they are. Okay, does everybody get that to work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, so let's see what I want to take a look at. We're going to start to look at some 3D view stuff. So there's different ways you can analyze your surface. One is to say, well, what does this look like if I look at it in what I call color banding? So I can apply a color to it based on what the elevation rise is. So there's a couple different ways to do this. So we're going to just click on this surface. We're going to go to Edit Surface Style. We're going to go to Analysis. So you can analyze it based on direction. So that'll tell you which way the triangles are facing. You know, north, northwest, whatever. I don't find this too valuable, but this one's really cool. The elevations, this is where we can do banding, or we can break it down by slope. So if you remember before, we said the slope was what was from like 4% up to 93%. So we can aggregate those triangles out by color. So you can say, well, anything from 4% to 10% is green, and anything from 10% to 20% is red, and you know, anything above that is another color. And then you have what these things called slope arrows, and slope arrows are really cool. Those are going to show you direct flows is what I think of it as. So we're going to do a color banding one first. This is really cool. We're going to open this guy up, and categories, got different categories, number of ranges. You can open that up. I usually do range interval or number of ranges. So we're going to do a range interval here. And we're going to set this to, I like the rainbow one. And I'm going to let my range interval be 5 feet. So every 5 feet, it's going to assign a different color is what it's going to do, okay? If you want to look at this as a 3D kind of picture, then you need to set your display type to 3D faces. So we're going to do what's called a 3D face. The other thing we need to do is exaggerate this, because usually it's too flat if you're just looking at normal surface elevation. So what I'm going to do is open up this guy, exaggerate it, and it depends on the site as to how much exaggeration you like to use. I probably go anywhere from 3 to 10. So I think 3 works pretty well for our exaggeration. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to do a range interval, rainbow for the color scheme, a 5-foot interval range. So every 5 feet, it's going to give me a new color, 3D faces, exaggerate elevation, and we're going to do it at 3 exaggeration. So then we're going to come over to display. Now this is interesting because in plan view, which is when you're top down, you can have one thing showing up, but when you're in a 3D view, which is what they call the model view, you can have different views showing up. So I want you to go to the model view, and we're going to turn off triangles if that's on, and we're going to turn on elevations. Okay, so basically everything off but elevations. Go ahead and apply that, and okay that. And you can now hit your shift and your middle mouse key and drag this around, and you should see you may have to, there it is. It's usually sitting way above your surface. You're going to find it's a little hard to find sometimes. So kind of get zoomed into it and tell you what might work. Is that working for everybody?
Yeah.
I found mine.
Okay. I'm going to show you a different tool which makes this a little bit easier. Just go ahead and find your surface. All right, and then we're going to type in 3DO for 3D orbit and hit enter. And then you can just, you may have to zoom out, but you should be able to, now I'm losing mine. You should be able to find it. Let's go to a top view. Start out with a top view, let's see. Well, that didn't work very well, did it? Let's do this. I don't know if you guys are having troubles, I am. I'm gonna take you back to a top view. Just go back to a top view and zoom out a little bit. How's that working? Is everybody back to a top view? If you're still in 3D orbit, just hit the escape key. Are we okay now?
Yeah.
All right, let's try 3DO from this point of view. Sometimes it's easier when you do this. So now just kind of move it gently. And again, you're gonna find your surface, but it's usually sitting above you somewhere. I'm having a hard time with mine. Are you guys finding yours? Anybody finding their surface? Oh, there it is. Usually it's not that hard. There it is, okay. All right, so once you find it, you should just be able to left click and then move this guy around like that very easily. Are you guys finding your surface? With 3DO, all you have to do is hold the left click. If you hit the middle mouse, it's kind of a move, it's kind of a pan. Left click is just being able to surface it around. Get it to a view kind of like that. And to see this as a better view, we're going to go over here where it says wireframe. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of there. Wireframe, and I'm going to go to what's called a realistic. And then if you want to use your shift and middle mouse, now you're in this view. It's pretty easy, but once you can do that, you can just kind of move in, you can zoom out, you can look at your surface. This is a great presentation tool. Also, if you get underneath it, you can actually see it is really just like a crumpled piece of tinfoil, but this has color to it. So this is what we would call color banding, or each color change is a 5-foot elevation change. You really can see what your surface is doing. You can see that creek that's coming down through that we defined. You can see there's kind of a little knob right in the middle. Okay, you guys getting this to work?
Yeah.
Yep.
Where's the creek?
The creek, I can't, when I put my surface on there, it's kind of coming down from here and it kind of snakes down through here. It's not highly defined because it's more like a swale than it is a creek. It's not like a deep creek. So it just kind of depends. But you can really, as you move around, Dave, you can kind of see what's going on here with this surface directly, how it's rising, and we got a low spot down here, and kind of see how that's working in. But notice it's all based on your triangles. No matter what those contours are telling you, it's all based on the triangles. We getting that to work, guys? All right, let's check this out as another view. I like this one. This is a really cool analysis tool. What I'm going to have you do is just go back to up here where it says custom. Just take that to top. And if it says realistic up here, we're just going to take that back to a 2D wireframe view. Okay. All right, so we're going to look at what are called slope arrows. And slope arrows are showing you two things. They're really showing you the direction water would be dropping or following, and they're also showing you the way that the triangle is locally facing. So that's called aspect on that triangle. So I want you to click on your surface, and we're going to right click, and we're going to go to edit surface style. And we are going to go into, we can leave it at plan view. I'm going to go to analysis. And this time I want to go to slope arrows. So I'm going to use, for my scheme, I'm going to use rainbow. I'm going to just let it stay at quantile. I'm not going to worry breaking that down. If you want to beef that up to maybe 12. So to give you 12 ranges of color, I'm going to use a slope arrow. Let's see, I'm not going to exaggerate this because I'm going to keep this on the flat plane. So I'm going to apply that, go to my display here. What I want you to do on this display for the plan view, we're going to turn off the contours. We're going to turn on the triangles, and we're going to turn on the slope arrows, okay? So again, to back up, under analysis, I went to slope arrows, rainbow, quantile 12, and then I went to display for plan view, triangles, border, slope arrows. Apply that, okay it, and you should now be looking at slope arrows on your site. So you can see that what this is telling me is water is going from this triangle to this triangle, and then this triangle's coming in on that triangle, so it's kind of going this way. These are also saying that this triangle's basically tilted in this direction. In this triangle, so in other words, we would say this triangle's like a northwest tilt. This triangle's more northwest, more north and west probably. Those are kind of facing north. These are kind of facing south. So that's, you can either look at that as what we call aspect, or you can look at that as the direction of flow. This is a really great analysis tool when you do things like roadway design. Because if you create a roadway, you want to make sure that those arrows are going away from the center line and toward the edge and into catch basins. So are you guys getting all that to work? Is that working for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And using that, working that, look at that in 3D, you could do that, but it's probably not as valuable as you would do that for other things. Okay, let's do one more thing here, and then we're gonna finish our contours. I want to do one more analysis and show you. Well, we'll do that last. Let's go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and put our contours back on. So I just want you to click on this guy, and we're gonna right click. We're gonna go to surface. I'm just gonna do a quick edit surface style. I'm going to toggle off triangles, toggle off slope arrows. I'm going to this time even get rid of the border, but I want to see my major contours and my minor contours. Go ahead and apply that. Okay, that. All right, so now we've got a nice picture. Okay, so we've analyzed it, we've looked at it, we feel pretty good with it. So what we're going to do is do some labeling on this guy now, okay? Is everybody ready? So you got a top view, you got wireframe showing up. So we're going to go to the Annotate tab. So under the Annotate tab, under Add Labels, you would have a surface option here now. So you can add surface labels, you got slope, spot elevation. I'm going to go to just Add Surface Labels, pops out this. This gives me the most flexibility. So under that, you can do slopes, spot elevation on a grid, contour single or contour multiple. So just to show you a slope, if I do a slope, I can label it in percent. If I add it, if I do a 2-point, if I pick a point here and go to here, and it shows me that slope, which is pretty cool. Now, here's the thing to understand. What is that slope actually measuring? Can anybody tell me? Is it the average slope or a combination or what? Because you notice this contour from here to here is greater than that contour there to there. So what it's actually giving me is an average slope essentially, because it's the point I picked here to the point I picked here is the slope I'm getting. So that's not saying it's 18% from here to here and here to here and here to here. It's 18% from here to here averaged. You guys get the idea on that?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody getting that to work? Everybody getting that to work?
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't do that a lot on your surface, but you know, you might, just depends. Let's do, this was probably a little bit more useful tool as a spot elevation. So let's go to a spot elevation. And I'm going to go ahead and you can do different things on this. Basically, they just have add elevation only, but you could actually add other things. Like you could label that so that it would give you, you know, northing and easting or X and Y, that kind of stuff. But we're just concerned with the elevation itself. So I'm going to just go ahead and do an add. So anywhere you pick on this surface, it's going to give you that. So this is a low spot. We know this is a low spot here. So I'm going to put that. That's probably one of the lowest spots. And this little knob has kind of a prominent high point, if you noticed on that thing we were looking at. So I'm going to label that. So any place you pick, right on your surface, it's extracting that surface elevation, and it's giving you that. And once you have that, I'm going to close that real quick. Once you have that, I believe if you drag this around, I'm going to turn my O-snap off here. If I drag that around, it's going to change. You see that changing as I'm moving it? So wherever I put that, it actually just really updates that thing instantaneously. So it's really intuitive because it's linked right to that surface, which is really cool. Guys, getting that to work?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing that's really important, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this one. We don't need that guy. So the other thing is important is you usually want to label your contours. Now, people don't label every contour typically. Most of the time you just label the major contours, but the labeling routine allows you to do both. So you can do either one. So we're going to just label the major contours and not the minors. So again, we're going to go to add labels on our surface. And I'm going to do what's called a contour. You can either do single or multiple. Multiple is kind of cool because it allows you to draw a line between them. Essentially, these are the same guys. But if I come up here and do a single, I just have to tell it what I want to label. So the major contour label style, it's going to use that one. For the minor, I don't want it showing me a minor, so I'm just going to say none for that. I'm going to go ahead and hit add, and I'm going to just pick that guy, and you pick that guy, and notice there's your contours. Go ahead, I'm going to close that a minute. Everybody getting their contours to show up?
Yeah.
Now watch this. If you click on this, go ahead and make sure you're out of the routine. So just, you might want to hit the escape key. By the way, we probably all ought to do this. I didn't even think about this. You might want to do a save real quick, because if you blow this file out, we're going to lose it. So I'm going to just go ahead and do a save real quick. You might want to do that too, just to have it. That way, if you crash, we can bring it right back up. Okay. Otherwise, we'd be in dire straits after we did all this stuff. Okay. So notice if you click on this guy, there's grips, and this grip will just let you slide it. And notice what's really cool is as you slide it, it follows along that contour, but it aligns itself right on the contour. I just love the way this works. Now these grip tools, these allow you to draw lines out, and what those lines do is any line that it crosses, if it crosses another contour, it's going to label it for you. See, like that. But we don't want to do that right now. I'm going to show you a different method to do that one. So I'm going to bring those guys back in here like that. Oops, put that one on there. All right. We okay with that? Okay, so the label style on this is a little strange. This one, usually we don't label it at 2 decimal place precision. So one of the things we're going to want to do is edit this style. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this guy, right click, and we're going to go to contour label properties. So this takes me to the properties dialog box, but what I can do is edit it within that. So notice we have surface contour label style major, minor, whatever we're using. We're going to click on this one for major and open this up, and we're going to edit this style. So I want to edit that style. And what I want to do is go to layout. So we have text height. We could adjust text height. We've got other things that we could adjust, but what I want to do is get to its precision. So I'm going to go to the contents, click on the contents. So we should be used to this. This one's a little tricky though. This one's trickier than some of the other labels, but we're going to go ahead and click on that guy. Notice the precision is 2 decimal places. Drop that down to 1. Don't forget to promote it. Okay, that. And that should say now when we get out of there, yeah, it fixes it. Okay. So all the contours now are going to be indexed just like you see it there. All right. Is that working for everybody?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to show you the multiple routine, which I kind of showed you before, but this one's kind of interesting. But there's one little trick about this you got to know. It's kind of hard to use. So I'm going to do another label, surface. I'm going to do multiple contours. So basically, you have to tell it what surface you're talking about. And let's see. No, it already knows. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that and just pick a line like that. Okay. Now, what happened here is it's doing what? It's giving me both major and minor, right? Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to just click on this guy right here. Right click, and we're going to edit the properties on this. We could have done that ahead of time, but just it's nice to know how to do this because this gets a little tough to deal with sometimes. So under this, where it says display minor contour labels true, we want to set that to false. Okay, notice it gets rid of them. The other thing is this line right here is harder than hell to get rid of if you don't know how to do it, but it's this guy up here, display contour label line. You want to set that to false too. You don't want to see that. Okay, so it acts like it's still there. It's really not. But if you click on that label, notice they're connected, which is kind of neat because you can just drag this guy around real easily just by dragging that line around. That location of that line makes those change like that. But those guys are linked together. So these are single ones and those are multiple ones. That's probably the trickiest aspect of turning that little line off. Yeah, so that's what I found. That's kind of a hard thing to deal with. Okay. Any questions? We doing all right so far? We good?
Yeah.
Okay, it's hard to gauge. All right, so I want to show you some cool tools here. One is called Water Drop. So this is an awesome tool. It used to show you, where from a high point to a low point water is going on your site. Designers use this for different reasons. A lot of it is water resource information, but guys that design ski slopes will use this to design where their ski runs are. So I've read there's a lot of different things you can use this for, but we're going to click on this guy, or surface, and notice now we've got that context sensitive editing tab up here. Right about in the middle is this guy called Water Drop. So this Water Drop dialog box pops up and it asks you kind of how you want to generate that. So you can do that as a 2D polyline or a 3D polyline. So if it's a 3D polyline, it's actually going to be on the surface. If it's a 2D polyline, it's going to be on a plane. So it just depends on what you want to use that for. You can put it on whatever layer you want. And you can also place markers at the start. That's kind of nice to do. So sometimes I'm just going to turn that on so we can see that. Oops, didn't go on. Yeah, I want to say yes. Okay. So once you get your settings, go ahead and hit OK. You just come up here, top of the surf, pick anywhere, and notice that water, water is going to fall from that point to that point. That's where rain would eventually go. Let's say from there to there. Notice it's flowing in, how they're all flowing together. That's a very cool tool. And like I said, if you're designing hydrologic systems, water, stormwater, or like I said, some guys use this in mountain ranges where they're looking for ski slope directions, those kind of things. You got this as a great tool. So this little guy, like I said, it's a 2D polyline in my case. I could just delete it out if I don't want it. Or it's going to go on a layer, so you could always control it by layer. Of course, I got that little symbol that's coming there behind it too. So you might want to get those out. Okay, everybody see how that works? Great little tool. Any questions on that one? Now it's pretty easy to use. We're good? All right, guess I'll say that's true. So here's another really cool tool. Who can tell me what a profile is? What's a profile?
Not like a side view.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. So we can draw a line down through this thing and generate what's called a quick profile. Okay, so we can look at what it's doing. So in other words, if I look at this on the edge, you can kind of see what it's doing, right? But that doesn't always work, explicitly. So in fact, that disappeared on me. So I can generate a graph profile based on putting a line down on this thing. So I just want you to go out and generate a line for me, and it doesn't matter. Just you can put your line kind of anywhere you want. I'm going to run my line like this, just kind of right through there. And we're going to click on the surface, and we're going to talk about profiles in 2 weeks. But this is what's called a quick profile. So we're going to go to this guy called Quick Profile Tool, and you just select the object you want to make the profile on. And it'll ask you kind of how you want to select things. There's all these styles associated with it. We don't need to be too concerned with that right now. So I'm going to hit OK. And it wants to know where to put the profile. So it'll probably generate it pretty big. But there's your profile. And you can set the settings. This guy just moves. It's just like a block almost, more or less. You can change the size of the grid and all of that, but we'll talk about that later. But this red line right here represents what the surface is doing here. So notice I'm coming from a low point, it's kind of dipping, and then I hit this little knob right there, and that's going up and down. Are you guys getting that profile to generate for you?
Yeah.
Now, here's what's really cool in Civil 3D. Everything is linked to everything else. So that line is basically linked to the surface, and the profile is linked to the surface. So if anything moves, everything updates. So basically the profile is being driven by the surface in this line. So click on your line, and I want you to click on one of the grips and just move it. And then hit enter. It should, oops. It should have moved it. Oh, it is. Do you notice as I move that line around, my profile is changing? Does everybody notice that? So the line is showing you where that profile is going to be. And what's happening is that's moving in response to where that line is along the profile, or along the surface, I guess I should say. And it's really, really neat the way that works. And like I said, we're going to be getting into profiles here. But this is a really quick way of getting a nice snapshot of what's going on with that by doing that quick surface kind of thing. Any questions on that? Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna just go ahead and take this line out. I'm gonna delete him. Notice my profile disappears because it's not attached to anything anymore. So that's you know, that's kind of neat. All right, a couple other things here, and then I'm going to show you one last thing. If you click on this surface, there's some really other cool tools up here. One is this thing called a drape image. So if you had a picture of this site, you know, like say from a drone picture, looking down on this, you could drape that on top of this surface so that that picture would look like it's got elevation to it. You know, they do that on Google Earth. Those all have drape images on their tin surfaces, which, by the way, you can take Google Earth and you can grab tin surfaces from Google Earth and bring those into Auto and Civil 3D. So you can do some pretty cool stuff in there. You can also do things like extract surface. So you can extract this surface. So you can extract solids. So for people that are doing 3D modeling on 3D printing, you can extract a surface. This thing called extract objects is pretty cool. So you can take contours and you can turn those guys into 2 or 3D polygons. And in fact, I'm going to show you I did that with our surface, just to show you can do this. So if you did extract objects, what it can do is it'll take those guys and bring those out as just a normal 2 or 3D object, and you can kind of deal with that. That's kind of interesting as well. I want to show you how to do an analysis on this surface that we can kind of look at in a different view, if you will. So I'm going to go on this surface here, and we're going to analyze this a little bit. So I'm going to right click, and we're going to go to surface properties. We're going to do what's called an analysis. And you have the same analysis things that you do for display. So you have elevations, you have slope arrows, you have slope analysis. We're going to do a slope analysis. So we're going to open this guy, this guy here, use what's called a slope analysis. And we are going to bounce the numbers up to 12. Then we're going to promote that down like that. What it's doing is it's using what's called a scheme of reds. So what this is showing me is that we have this color red is slopes between 4% and almost 6% are going to be that color, and then 6% to 8% are another one. You could do those different ways, but I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And then I'm going to go OK. And let me see, I think I have to then display this. Let's go to display that. I hope this works. Under my analysis, yeah, that should work. So we're going to go to display, turn your contours off, turn your slopes on. And that's what it looks like. That's broken that down. So in other words, if you're looking for flatter slopes that may be more buildable, you can see the bright reds are the flatter slopes. The steep slopes, these are the ones you want to stay away from in terms of if you're trying to do building on this site. And then we should be able to label this. So if I go to add a table, I'm going to add a surface label table. I'm going to do it for slopes, and it's going to be dynamic. Bring it over here, and there's your whatever's happening over here is showing you over here what's going on with that. So that's giving me a dynamic table look to the way that is. That's, you can see the correlation now. So probably, you know, if you're looking for a buildable site, the most buildable sites would probably be between 4% and let's say about 12%. Now we could make a different color so that they really jump out. You can do a lot of different things, but it kind of gives you the idea and how that works. Has everybody seen how that's going? You guys getting that to work for you?
Yeah.
So that's a way. I mean, we were doing the analysis without actually generating the table, but if you want to generate the table, you have to go to that analysis tab that we just went to. Okay, I want to show you guys one more thing before we get out of here, and then we'll be done for the day. And we're going to be building all these surfaces. So our next assignment is going to be a surface project. You're going to like it. it's actually pretty easy to do once you start dealing with it. But playing with the 3D gets a little, you know, you got to deal with that a little bit. And this surface is pretty small, just so you know. But if you have a really, really big surface, it really can be resource intensive, and you may crash occasionally. So you be careful when you're using any kind of surface. You want to make sure that you are saving periodically. That's going to be real important. So I'm going to just go ahead and save this file right now, and we're going to create another project. So what I did, just to show you, you can click if you want. You don't need to do this, but what I did actually on mine, I actually took my contours and extracted them for you guys. So I made these lines basically into 3D, or they're actually 2D polylines. What that'll allow me to do is, if someone else is using a different version of a software, they can't read my surface, I can give them 3D polylines and they can construct a surface from it, or vice versa. I can get three or 2D polylines from somebody and I can convert those into a surface. So there is a way to share data if you need to. So if we go back to Blackboard, there's another file that you guys want to take a look at. If you would download this for me. There's a file here called extractedcontours.dwg. So what I'd like you to do is just, I'm going to put that out to the desktop. You guys might want to do the same. I'm just going to take this guy, put him out on my desktop so I can find him. And you could open that file, but that file isn't necessarily a valid. I guess it is actually. Let me see something real quick before I have you do that. I think I can open that. Let me see if this will work for you. Yeah, we can't do that. So what we're going to have to do is we'll do it a little differently. So. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. That file that I have is just like basically an AutoCAD file. So it doesn't have any of the Civil 3D information associated with it. So what you're going to do is just go ahead and open up a new project. Okay, so this brought in all of that. That's your template file that's bringing in all of your styles. Otherwise, by opening that file, it won't have any styles. Okay, so did everybody get that file located and down on their desktop? Is everybody ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a brand new file. There's nothing in it, right? No graphics at all, but it does have styles. Okay, so that's the key thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that drawing that I created, which is just 2D polylines, and we're going to insert that. So I just want you to type in dd insert. This is a little bit easier command to use. dd insert, and browse to your desktop or wherever you located that file. You should see that one that's called extracted contours. Okay, so it should be extracted contours. Under specify on screen, don't toggle anything, leave it 0, 0, and this, just like everything alone, and then just hit OK. And it may not show anything. If you do a zoom extents, you should see it come in like that. And it should be a block. So if you click on it, it should be a block. How's that working?
Mine works.
Okay, anybody else? Is anybody else seeing this?
I'm good.
Okay, All right,
Yeah,
so
I got mine.
okay, good. So this is a block, so we got to explode it, okay? So just click on it and then just hit X, explode it. So it looks like contours, right? Everybody agree? It look like contours?
Yeah.
If you click on it, you'll notice it's not. All it is, it's a 2D polyline, okay? But this polyline, if I click on a polyline and I list it, well, mine's just whacking out. If I list that polyline, it's got the same elevation, which is important. So it is a 2D polyline, but it is at the proper elevation. Okay, so like for instance, this one, that's a major contour right there. If I list it, notice it's at 880 foot elevation. That's what it should be. So we don't have a surface, but we're going to create one out of this because we can create one from contours, what they call it. So what we're going to do is go to Prospector, right click on surface, create a surface. You can call this anything you want. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to call it, I'm just going to hit OK, and it'll generate what's called surface 1. So once you get surface 1, open it up. And you're going to see this guy called contours down here. So we're going to right click, add. So basically these have to be 2D polylines that are connected, which they are. Now you'll notice these things called weeding factors. So what's going on here is if I look at this, notice each one of those grips is a vertex. And what it's saying for weeding, if it falls below a certain distance, it'll get rid of the vertex. And if the angle between them is less than a certain setting, it's going to get rid of the vertex. So in general, you don't want to lose vertexes, okay? So what I do is when I do this, I usually set this down to a really small number. I'm going to set that down to 0, and I'm going to set that down to 0. Basically, what I'm telling AutoCAD to do is not get rid of any of the contours that I want. So I'm going to go ahead, or actually the vertexes, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and OK that. I'm going to just window this in like that, and then hit Enter. And you'll notice you now have a surface. And what's really awesome about this, you notice that the contours of the surface are sitting right on top of the contours, the polylines we generated them from. So we now have a surface. You can edit that surface. You could weed it out. You could do any of the stuff that you have. So this is a kind of cool process of allowing people to, really, you can take any line or polyline or anything and convert it into a surface. But this is a nice way of sharing data for if you lose your surface some way, this is a good way of getting a surface back. It's not a perfect world though, because it's not going to be perfect in how it generates stuff. But notice, by the way, it generated a surface here, but mine stopped. So again, I'm going to have to weed that out. Okay, did everybody get that to work for them? It's just a different method. We used points, which is more common, but you can use this or combinations. Okay. We doing okay?
Yeah.
All right, so we covered a lot of ground today. And so that's kind of what we're going to be working on. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see surfaces. Now, this week, we're going to be doing a contour type of project, a surface project related to just what we did. And then on the following week, we're going to get into alignments. So we're not going to be surface dependent on those, but I mean, they could be part of your drawing. But when we get back into profiles and grading and that kind of stuff, that's where you're going to start to see those guys kick back in. Okay, any questions? How about the parcel problem? Is anybody have any issues on parcels?
I was just on our assignment 6. I was just wondering what scale you used.
For the final?
Yeah.
I think it's
For like the when you insert the scale, because it goes to 80 to 0 to 40 to 80.
oh, well, what's the scale I'm asking you to do?
80.
80? Yeah, so it should be, there's so many different ones. Just make sure you're using feet and you're using imperial.
All right.
And then it depends on what scale bar you choose. Okay. They're all different. So you might see one that says 20, 60, 80, or you might see one that's just 40 and 80. That's your common one. I don't like all of those scale bars. They used to have some really nice ones and they got rid of them for some reason. Back in Civil 3D days, they were or not Civil 3D, but Land Desktop had some really nice ones, but they got rid of them. Same thing with their arrows. Their arrows are just, I don't know, they're not good. But yeah, it should just typically, if you find one that says 40 and 80, that's a good one. Or 20, 60, 80, that kind of thing. 20, 40, 60, 80. All right. But for some reason, and I'm not sure why on your shell, yours said what it was supposed to be, but it wasn't the right scale. So I'm wondering if you scaled it after you got it in there somehow.
Oh, maybe.
Well, you can, because remember, that's a block. So you got to be real careful.
Okay.
So when you bring it in, make sure if you're moving it, you're just moving it and not dragging it, because if you're dragging it, it might be scaling it, differently. Even though it'll still say 60, on it, it may not be, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. So you might be safer, if you want to move it, it might be safer to go into the move command and then select that block and then move it instead of trying to do it with grips.
Okay.
Because that could have made the difference. Yeah, I couldn't figure out why yours was not right, but it just wasn't. So, okay. That was a good question. Okay. All right. Anything else? I think you're going to like surfaces. Surfaces are really, really cool process. And they're very, very important to the civil world, And I mean, people that are doing drone photography and stuff, they're extracting surfaces from that photographs, or they're doing LiDAR. Everything in a project is coming from surfaces. So eventually you're getting to that point. So everything we've been doing is really very 2D. Now we're really getting into the 3D world. Although I should say, points have been 3D all along. We just really haven't recognized that. But now we're starting to see how that stuff works. Okay. Questions? All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share. I'm gonna pause.